Art teachers of Reddit, what's you draw anything you want story? Not my story, but seems to fit here. When I was in school to certify to become a teacher, we had a former principal as a professor for one of our courses who was trying to illustrate how difficult it can be to manage parent complaints and how to approach those situations with administration. His example was how he had been called into a conference once with an angry mom and the elementary school art teacher. The mom was furious because the teacher had asked the children to close their eyes and draw whatever came into their imagination. His assumption was that a student had drawn something inappropriate. Nope. The mom was mad because summoning an image in one's mind was witchcraft. Summonus Imagius. I've had some really funny ones, but this one is not and reminds me whenever I think of it to consider kids' circumstances. I worked in a low-income high immigrant population school. This girl was amazing, outspoken, kind, great grasp of English. She drew a picture of her brother and her. I asked her who else was in the picture since there appeared to be part of a third person. She calmly replied, "That's my brother's head. He was killed in our village right before we went to the refugee camp." I look her up and down and say something sympathetic, masking my horror. "Yeah, they came into my village, grabbed all the boys and were going to take them away. My brother and his friend tried to run, so they cut off his head. I was standing right there. Would you like me to draw you a picture?" I said no thank you. I asked where her little brother, also in art class, was when this happened. "Oh, we dressed him up like a girl. He makes a cute girl." I should mention before the above exchange we were talking about One Direction or something totally banal. I was a K-12 ESL teacher and worked in schools with high refugee populations. It was heartbreaking to hear some of the stories of the traumas they experienced, and like yours, it would come out at the most innocuous times, usually through drawing or writing. It's not drawing, but I gave my high school kids a poetry assignment. They could write about anything that was school appropriate and have one curse word that wasn't a slur or the F-bomb. It had to include so much figurative language. Act. Girl turns in me's. My name is a bee. A poem about how she's tired of writing poems and that she's annoyed with me for assigning so many. Includes all requirements. I have her a 96. A few errors. And the next poem she writes is me's. My name is a cool bee about how she was sorry she was mean. Solid response. Sometimes the only way kids feel comfortable airing their grievances is through their creativity. I just remembered a poor little guy who drew a self-portrait. He drew with meticulous detail, and when it came down to drawing his pants, he drew the zipper so carefully but it looked like a penis. I was flummoxed about how to tell him that people might see something there that he didn't intend. I got in trouble once for drawing a pooping butt. Little did my teacher know, but the drawing was actually a poorly drawn butterfly that ended up looking like a hairy pooping butt, and when asked why I put the details I did, like the legs and antenna and proboscidea coming off the segmented body, I said I dunno. Don't they all look like that? I saw one at recess and thought it was pretty and wanted to draw it, thinking of the butterfly of course. Nope. I ended up having to see the school counselor. Never assume what kids are trying to draw. Always ask. High school 1977. Not a teacher. While everyone else was drawing Pink Floyd rainbows and peace signs all over everything, the biggest burnout in the class made a wide metal bracelet with intricate triangular designs cut out of it. He turned it in and got a great grade for the first project he ever bothered finishing and some well-deserved praise for his effort. Teacher handed our work back and first thing he did was grab a pair of pliers and bent all the triangles outward, making it a thick metal spiked bracelet. I found that devilishly, disturbingly clever. A lone punk rocker in a sea of hippies. I have a design your own monster Halloween lesson. Most kids draw cute ghosts or cool vampires. One 7th grader drew a sad clown hanging by a belt from a ceiling fan. He had issues. Student here. My art teacher was somewhat crazy. She let us draw anything we wanted to get 100%. All you had to do was tell her it had a deep connection to the earth or some other nonsense. I drew a jellyfish and told her it represented wisdom because it was immortal. I like to imagine one day she will just see a documentary on jellyfish and learn that they can't really learn or have wisdom and just have this epiphany. The kid was just making crap up. One kid had to have a meeting with the principal, her parents and the art teacher because the art teacher decided that because this 2nd grade girl only drew people without hands, The little girl felt powerless. All these adults question this child about the meaning of her drawings. She tells them, hands are too hard to draw. I wanna see this art teacher's psychotherapy degree. Parent here, not an art teacher. In kindergarten, my son came home with a packet of finished assignments he got back from the teacher. One was a paper having them draw a body part with the prompt, here are my. Example given was feet. What did my kid draw? Butt cheeks. Drawing of the back of a person with two giant, well drawn, I might add, cheeks. My husband and I laughed our own butt cheeks off when we saw it. We kept the paper for posteriority. I laughed at the posteriority joke. Clever. When I was in 2nd grade, our teacher told us to doodle on the back of a quiz if we finished early. I decided to draw a house high in the sky with a long staircase leading to it. To emphasize its height, I drew clouds, but it needed more. I decided to add in an airplane. Later my teacher called me to her desk and I got in trouble because the plane looked like it was heading towards the house, and this was right after 9/11 happened. Still have no idea what I was thinking. I ran arts and craft classes at a youth group for disadvantaged kids. Decided one day to give them total freedom. I just put out all the supplies we had and let them go crazy. Kids made some really cool works of art, all very colorful and creative. I was talking to one kid when another asked me to help him spell things for his artwork. I go over to his table with him and he's been making a card for a boy in his class at school. He tells me his friend's mum had just died from cancer and he wanted to make a card for him to cheer him up, but he couldn't spell anything he wanted to write. He was 13 years old and I had to help him spell out something like, dear, I am so sorry about your mum, but I will always be your friend and here for you. Love. I had to help him spell his own name. He made the card totally unprompted. I feel for the guy. He was totally sweet and caring for his friend and really smart. He'd just not got the help he needed. Went home after and had a little sob. Thanks for being a light in this world. I'm a teacher, but I don't teach art. I was teaching a class of 7-year-olds who are usually a blessing, but there's just one kid who has some real problems. He can't speak English at all. Even after me spending a year trying to teach him and all his classmates progressing well, he just refuses to engage with any teacher and is extremely disruptive, often crying and screaming. I think he has special needs, but that's not handled well in China. Anyway, after battling with him to no avail, assigning him class police roles, everything, I just gave up this one day and gave him some paper to draw on whilst the rest of the kids learned without him distracting them. He drew a picture of me with a large PP and lots of knives and me with blood and wrote my name in perfect English. It was eerie, but I just felt sad and concerned what had happened to this boy. The school gave him no support and I only saw him for about an hour a week. I left the school shortly after, unrelated, and wonder how he is now. Probably in prison. That's where unsupported special needs children usually end up throughout the world. It shouldn't be that way, but it is. Unless he got the help he needed, then he's probably doing just fine. Former student here. We were supposed to do a bit of abstract artwork for a course assignment. My work was a framed square cut out from an old t-shirt I had previously used to help erase stain an old table. Not only did I get an A on the assignment, but I entered it into a silent auction later that semester and someone bought it. Also former student. 10th grade art teacher told us to draw the city 50 years from now. I drew flying buildings and she threw it back at me because flying buildings are impossible. When I was around 8 or 9, I got into drawing cars, and simultaneously into drawing tribal decorations. Probably not PC, but you know, the type a lot of people get as a tattoo. So I drew a car with tribal decal, and because of the hook-like shapes in the tribal decal, I appropriately named the car the H. When she was done laughing, my mom took the time to explain the world's oldest profession. Reminds me of that time I got suspended in kindergarten for drawing a crappy stick figure gun. I tried to save myself that day by saying it was a water gun since it was so crappy you couldn't tell the difference, but they weren't having it and little Plaver 27 went home that day. That's a strange thing to get detention for. Not that I particularly approve that way of raising boys, but when I was a kid, lots of boys would play with toy guns, action men figures and stuff, and them drawing guns and scenes with fights was like a normal occurrence. We had 3 lessons for it. I spent 2.5 messing around and the last half copying an existing Bauhaus painting in chalk. That was the only good grade I got in art class. Not a teacher, but in middle school we got an assignment in art class to draw a still life of fruit. I thought the idea was totally boring and decided to put a creative spin on it. I drew a bunch of different fruits all sitting in the seats of a coliseum watching an apple kill an orange in the center ring. I failed the assignment, and my teacher even pulled me out into the hallway to tell me directly that she didn't like me or the work that I produced. I didn't let that crush my dream though, and I kept making my assignments weirder and weirder to pee her off. As someone who wished to do art therapy with kids, I would have given you an 100%. Any subject can be boring for some. As long as you followed the guidelines and put the effort in, then it should have been a pass. The whole point of art is pretty much creativity and weirdness. Not an art teacher. However, I used to grade the weekly sketchbooks for my art class as a senior. One week my teacher gave the prompt something with wings. So I'm grading all these sketchbooks that are 80% stick figures from kids that just took art to get an easy fine art credit. Lots of planes and birds. A few angels. Then I get to this one sketchbook that I know dang well belongs to a dude that's just coasting for the easy credit. I open it up expecting another stick bird and instead I'm surprised with this crude but identifiable bucket of KFC wings. I lost my crap and cackled as I gave him a 100 knowing my cranky butt teacher would have instantly failed him if she'd seen it. In 9th grade as an end of the year project we could basically draw whatever we wanted and we had a week to do it. Me being the little car nerd I am drew the entire drivetrain and suspension of a Chevy K5 Blazer. In junior high my art teacher pulled me aside to tell me that she was really impressed because I could draw better than her. After that she pretty much let me have free rein as long as what I was drawing worked towards the lesson goal, such as shading, perspective, etc. For the end of year project, I did a Robotech Veritech fighter in stipple, drawn only using dots. The next year when I would have had her again for art, she paid out of pocket for me to take an art course at the community college across the street. She was an absolutely amazing teacher. YSSSS Robotech. I'm a art teacher but this story is about my substitute teacher. I asked my students what they had been drawing when I was gone. The class was absolutely silent, apart from some boys that were giggling. They were 13 years old. I asked what was so funny, and they said the substitute was great. At the same time the girls seemed as they wanted to disappear from the classroom. So I asked why the teacher was great, and the boys just exploded. He told us to draw flying dongs. Well, I don't have to say more than that substitute teacher never come to our school again. Poor Daryl. Tried to leave his poultry farming life behind when he became a teacher, but as they say, you can take the farmer out of the farm but you can't take out his dong. When I was in the 7th grade our art teacher had us do whatever we wanted to be entered in the school art fair. I was really lazy and decided to just use every color of pastel that was available to draw a rainbow of sorts on a piece of construction paper. Then I tore it all into pieces and glued them all together again randomly. I called the piece Life and argued that it was supposed to represent the chaos and uncertainty that is life. It ended up winning first place in my grade's part of the art fair and I ended up getting a cool art set. But really it was just me being lazy and feeding some bulls about a deeper meaning. That's pretty ironic. For all the people that spend countless hours planning their project and then poured their hearts and souls into it. Their parents told them it was the best art project they had ever seen. And then life serves up as it always does and the person who didn't care and was lazy about it wins. Nice. Fresh out of college, I got a job working with 1st and 2nd graders at an after-school program. My kids had journals that they wrote and drew in every day. Once, I had my 1st graders draw a picture of what they like to eat and write a sentence to go along with it. I was walking around the tables to check their work as they were finishing up and saw that one little boy drew a big brown phallic object with the word dong written across the front. Underneath, in proud bold letters, he had written I like dong. I pulled him aside and asked him to tell me about what he wrote. Coke is my favorite drink, he told me. I had to explain to him that it's very important to spell it Coke not dong. TLDR, boy says he likes to eat dong. I was an art teacher for 4 years and have so many stories. One that comes to mind is a drawing this strange little child who was oddly obsessed with me made me as a gift. Now, for context, my personal aesthetic is what my friends affectionately call adult tomboy goth, which is to say I wear all black, somewhat androgynous clothing, and have a penchant for the dark and absurd. Of course, in work environments I dress more professionally, but my kids all knew I was a dark humored little oddball and they loved me for it. So, this girl is doing free draw and every time I walk over she covers up the paper with her arm and hisses at me like a cat, as she was wont to do. After about an hour she scurries over to me with this huge grin on her face and announces, Baba Yagatron, Baba Yagatron, I made you a thing, and my lord, oh boy, was it the best gift I have ever received from a child. The drawing was of a skeleton, beckoning a crying girl with no eyes into a pre-dug grave. The grave site was elaborately mapped out with a whole underground portion where the coffin would be, a tombstone, and little flowers around the tombstone. I laminated it and to this day it is still on my bedroom door, even after 3 moves around the country. I freaking miss teaching. Not a teacher, but when I was in 7th grade I drew a picture in my art class sketchbook of Barney and Elmo smoking pot and drinking booze, drawn with colored pencils and all. I showed it to my friends and they thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. The art teacher, however, was not pleased and sent me to the principal's office. The principal then looked through my sketchbook and ripped out all the drawings she deemed as inappropriate. It shattered my soul that day and I cried for some time afterwards. In fact, I think that's what ended my dream of becoming an artist. Frick you, Mrs. Bano and Mrs. McKeon, for robbing me of a better future. You can still be an artist now. The internet would love your particular brand of social commentary. My art teacher's story about me is that I spent an entire school year drawing and painting planes. Must have been strange. As an art teacher and former goth teen, nothing my kids have drawn has really shocked me. I've had to make kids change things that are inappropriate. One time a high school girl drew a hand giving the middle finger in chalk when we were drawing outside, so we changed it to a peace sign. I did have to call home for 2 first graders who were drawing pooping butts while I was giving instructions. Their moms and I laughed through the entire phone call. I rarely let them draw whatever, because they inevitably would draw predictable cliches. 8th grade boys would draw knives with blood dripping, or an eye, and girls a unicorn. Trying to get them to draw from life was tough. Obligatory not an art teacher, but I got a call about something like this from my kid's art teacher. She was 13 and in 8th grade art where she was told to do a pencil sketch of whatever she could think of. We had just moved, so the class had been working on this for a week and she had about a day. The teacher made sure the kid knew she would be getting an A just for turning something in. But because it was a new school, they were not yet aware that my kid has a morbid sense of humor and a fair amount of artistic talent that she built over the years. 2 days later the art teacher calls me to make sure that everything is okay with kid because her sketch was of a live hamster in an electric coffee pot. It's one of my favorite pieces of her work. I had a 5th grade student who was very shy, hesitant to start her work. The project was on identity and kids were supposed to draw things about themselves inside a silhouette of their heads that we had traced. She was almost in tears because she was very insecure and couldn't think of what to draw. I was trying to help her out by asking easy questions like what's your favorite animal? What's your favorite TV show to watch on Netflix? Finally at what's your favorite food she perked up, left my desk, and got to work. A few minutes later she proudly brings her drawing to me. I did it. I drew a taco. And I also made it pink because pink is my favorite color. I know tacos aren't pink, but in art things can be any color, right? Do you like my pink taco maze? It took everything in me to stifle my giggles, and I reassured her her taco was beautiful and that yes, it could be any color she wanted. She then proudly showed everyone in the room her pink taco. Thank God she was not a 7th or 8th grader. It went over all of their sweet innocent heads and they all praised and encouraged her. Great day. Student here pulled up pictures of severe frostbite to draw on a piece of paper in 6th grade. I wasn't allowed to do that. What in the frick made you do that in the first place? When I was a sophomore in high school my art final was a paint anything you want assignment. So me being the creative mind that I am, I painted a photorealistic octopus that may have resembled my art teacher teaching an art class. Underwater scene, super duper trippy. Probably my best single piece of artwork I've made up to that point. Well, long story short, my teacher didn't like the route I went and gave me a C on my final. When my art class found out about this, it was almost an absolute riot because they thought I turned in one of the best finals of the year. Fast forward to the art show on the final day of school and my octopus was awarded a best in class ribbon. An amazing take. That moment for me against that teacher also taught me a valuable lesson that everyone judges art differently and I just need to keep doing my own thing. Not an art teacher, but my daughter in first grade was given an assignment to write a story and draw. She wrote and drew a story about Frisky the rhino. Please tell me that's saved somewhere. In the second grade, my sister wrote a story about a possum that ate a grandma and her grandson. It ended with the boy said to his grandma, "Let's bounce this possum." And they did. She's 31 now and we still crack up about it. Not an art teacher, but when I was in late elementary, early junior high, my art teacher at the time gave us free reign. I had just learned what fairies and pecamorphs, jajinkas, I think, were at the time. My art teacher thankfully just thought I couldn't draw werewolves for crap. My brother and his friend were 5 and attended an art class club. They got to draw anything they wanted. Our dog had just died, so my brother drew the dog with angel wings. A pretty good one for a 5-year-old. The friend, who was a wild kid, the kind that always got detention later in his school years, drew a large wave and people escaping it. He explained that it was the tsunami of 2004. Which had just happened. The moms of the boys and the teacher were swallowing tears when they saw the drawings. I don't see any issue with an angel dog. Seems like a pretty nice memorial for a well-loved papa. But I can see why that tsunami got them worrying. This was when I was at A last summer. It was for youth art classes at a very nice art museum. And I was helping out with the group of 5-8-year-olds. There was this one 6-year-old student who would act up a lot during class, always talk over the teacher, but then produce really beautiful and detailed drawings. The only issue was they were always monsters from the Godzilla movies. No matter what the students were assigned to do, he managed to make these monsters the main image. This would be fine if I were the teacher. My main goal was for the kids to finish the day wanting to keep making art, but the actual teachers I worked with were a lot more rigid. The student gained a bit of a reputation for being difficult to work with and not respecting the teachers. I was essentially tasked with handling this student and making sure he stays on task. What I soon realized was this kid was insanely talented. He had an advanced grasp on animal anatomy, visual storytelling, and composition. After working with him for a month, it became clear that he only acted up when the art being taught was something he was already skilled at, which was most of time since it was a beginner's class. He would quickly finish the assignments and get bored, then add Godzilla to them. Whenever he was learning a new technique or using new materials, he wouldn't do this. He was also very book smart and very nice. Once he saw I wouldn't get mad at him for his art, I ended up talking to his mom after class one day and explained why he would often get in trouble. I then told her that the class was honestly too entry level for him and that she should see about him getting private lessons. She was extremely happy to hear this and was thrilled that her son actually liked me. He had a rough time with school teachers too. The summer program ended soon after and I haven't seen him since. I'll bet he never forgot you. Oh, I'm not a teacher, but every year in my art class our teacher would give the assignment to draw Santa Claus in an unexpected place. One year my classmate drew a very realistic and very detailed picture of Santa Claus in the strip club, throwing cookies to the strippers smoking a blunt. It was good, like really good, but he was still suspended. I will ho 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 this ho. Reposting myself. A girl, 9 years, was doodling, and looking at the drawing afterwards I could immediately see her process. 1. She drew a little dancing dude, arms and legs apart. 2. She drew Hill a little wiener. 3. She freaked out upon seeing the wiener. Her first idea to fix it: add more wieners. 4. She must have really freaked once she saw the penis of Frankenstein she had created. So she switched to a marker and drew a skirt over the wiener, added a girly hairdo to the head and added some eyelashes. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.